Hello friends, I'm Kayla, but you already know that if we're already friends. This is my June wrap up in which I read 20 things. These are my stats, check them out. We're not talking them through. They're just here to exist for the ease of me creating quarterly wrap ups and end of the year one as well. I decided to organize this stack by books that I haven't talked about yet to books that I have talked about and at length. So like this book maybe got a 2-minute section of the vlog. This book I talked about for 5 minutes of a vlog. This one I talked about for a full hour in a live show. So this way I'll get the books out of the way that you maybe most want to hear about because I haven't talked about them anywhere else, and then you can get out of here. So you don't have to keep staring at me and my ugly eye. I burst a blood vessel. I'm feeling very ugly. I wish I was not filming today, but I have 3 videos to finish, to start and finish, before I can go on vacation. And then I'm off. I'm out of here for a week, but you would never know that because this video is coming out while I'm on said vacation, as well as the next 2 that you're gonna watch and have to continue to stare at my ugly eye. Ooh, fun idea for a game. Let's see what I finish first, this video or this coffee. First up, we've got Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. You might see Babel in here. I read this in a video earlier this month, and I had Yellowface on my TBR, and I had like a couple days left of the month that I could read something. And so I thought to myself, looking at this stack and the colors, because I take a photo of my wrap up every month, what color do I need to insert into the stack to make it perfectly balanced and even? And it was yellow, so I grabbed a yellow book. This is a story of June and Athena, and they are friends-ish. They're both authors. One is much more successful, that's Athena, and she dies at the very beginning of the book. When she dies in June's company, June finds a manuscript that is incredible, Athena's next like masterpiece, and she talks herself into publishing it under her own name as a nod to Athena, to respect her and her career, and this incredible book can't be kept from the masses because it's so good. But instead of making some reasonable decision about like figuring it out with her estate and publishing it, maybe editing it herself, she just decides to publish it under her name because she's also very jealous of Athena and believes that Athena has gotten certain support in the industry that June has not. The book then goes on to be a balance between critiquing the industry, talking about the toxicity in publishing, talking about racism and microaggressions that June herself as a white woman doing what she's doing is enacting, but also that she believes she is experiencing as a white woman publishing a story about a culture of which she does not belong. So it's half that and half June trying to cover up the plagiarism, trying to hide it from people. Certain people are speculating things, wondering if she has a place in this industry, why she wrote this, who it really belongs to, and it's how the guilt overtakes her life. It's just very unlikable characters at the heart of this, which is something I historically love. I ended up giving it a 4. I think it is on point with its criticism. I think it's smart. It did unfortunately lose me as a thriller reader towards the end when it gets very thrillery and goes in the direction of a really cheesy, convenient plot that I've read way too many times before. But I think this will definitely appeal to a lot of people. I'm sure there are things that authors will read and feel seen and feel represented by. I think the everyday literary fiction reader will like this because it goes into this wild situation. It is so fast-paced, absolutely like a one-day read. I feel like I would recommend this to a lot of people, and yeah, I left with a 4. Sip number 2. Book number 2, Ascension. Oh, how I wanted to love Ascension. This is by Nicholas Binge, and I have such mixed thoughts about this still to this day. I finished it like a week ago. It's the kind of book that no, that's so mean. If I shut off my brain, I can enjoy. The first, I would say 30 pages, maybe 50 pages of this, I thought this was gonna be a 5-star and like a new favorite book of mine. It kicks off following this man who, there's just something about the writing and something about the setup that really did it for me. He is trying to find his brother who, well, he's not trying to find his brother. His brother has been gone for, I think, decades. And one day somebody finds evidence that he's actually alive and he is in this institution. And so he goes to get his brother out, and his brother is completely, he's lost it from everyone else's perspective. He's mumbling about some crazy things, his memory is confused, and the man that we're following at the beginning, who his brother is in the institution, he ends up getting his hands on these letters that his brother, who's been institutionalized, has written while he was on this trip to this mountain that appears in the Pacific Ocean one day. It's completely impossible, and all of these scientists get invited and brought there to ascend the mountain and find out where it came from. So the setup, 100% fascinating and so well told. And then it turns into an epistolary novel, and it's written in letters from the man who is on the trip. And I just don't think that that is the way to tell this story. I think it would have made more sense as journal entries or just his perspective. And I typically like epistolary novels, but I just, with all the things that are going on in this mountain that they are witnessing, it just is so implausible that he would be sitting there writing a letter to never send that just goes on for pages and pages and pages about his experience when he is in danger. This is like sci-fi, I don't know, sci-fi horror. I would recommend it for fans of Annihilation, though I liked it more than Annihilation. I don't know my rating. I think it's in the 3s, but I wanna love it. Basically, you're wondering for a good portion of this book, is what this man witnesses on this mountain real? Did he make it up? Is it a government conspiracy? Is it this real horrific phenomenon? Like, so many things come into the story that are wild, truly unhinged. The ending, and I think the reason behind everything, is great. But the journey to get there, I don't know. This just feels like it was written by somebody who has never been on a mountain and never studied geology. This is implausible in itself, right? But the descriptions of like how rocks are formed and like general hiking and mountaineering knowledge, it seems like he made that up too, because it's not rooted in reality. So if I can turn off my brain, then it would be more enjoyable. I think this was very ambitious. I think it was interesting at the end of the day, but I just don't know if it was the right way to get there. So I'm gonna give it a 3.5. There's definitely a group of people I would recommend this to if you like silliness in a science fiction situation, but that feels very serious. It takes itself very seriously, which doesn't really match what's actually happening. I don't know, maybe I should reread it. I wanted to love it. I also haven't told you about The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. So let's talk about it. First of all, do not pick up the audiobook of this. It ruined my experience. My rating is for the book itself and not for the audiobook, but I really just need romance publishing to give the same budget that like fantasy publishing gets, because this needed to be properly dramatized. We did have dual narrators, but the issue for me in a book like this is in romance, there's so much dialogue. And so even though we have a man narrating the men's sections, his name is Max, in the audiobook, so much of those chapters is the audiobook narrator just like imitating a woman's voice because he's constantly talking to Carolina. And it was the worst. Like literally felt like it was mocking a woman's voice. We just need a little more production quality in these audiobooks, because there's only a few narrators out there who can pull off switching. Like Julia Wayland doing a man's voice actually doesn't make me cringe. But whoever the man who did this is, it's offensive. Especially when we got to like the sex scenes and we had to read her dirty talking in his fake woman voice. It was horrific. But listen, I wasn't enjoying the book and I just needed to get it done, and I couldn't DNF it because unfortunately this was a members TBR jar pick, which no negativity to that person because it's my fault, because I read The Wedding Crasher, which is the spin-off of this, and I feel like it's almost tainted my view of that because this feels like two completely different authors to me. All the things I liked about The Wedding Crasher existed in here too, but they were all cringy. The relationship, the conversations, the little like fake dating that existed. There was a little poetry reading in here that I can't believe I made it through. Basically what happens is we have this woman at the beginning of the book and she is supposed to marry this man, But then this man, who's his brother, convinces him that he shouldn't actually marry her. And then years later, however long later, they end up getting together. Now you'd think, Kayla, you must not like it because you have a moral dilemma. I don't. I don't care. Do what you want. That really did not matter to me. But that is the main tension in the book. That is why they're resisting their attraction to each other. They get forced together because they're kind of vying for a similar position or the ability to like work together in this wedding industry job where there's like event planning, and the event planning of it was fun. I like books about weddings, but when it came down to it, like I just did not like their relationship. I didn't like either of them as characters necessarily, just the way that they existed in the world, the way they talked, the way they acted, the way they interacted. And there was some fun tropes in here. Like there was only one bed. They went to check out this event location together and they had to pretend to be together. On paper, this was for me. In reality, it was a 2-star, and I'm so sad about my romance journey. What's next? The Do's and Donuts of Love by Adiba Jagadar I didn't talk to you about because I started reading it thinking that I would fit it into a Third Time's a Charm video, because I already had this author in one earlier this year where I read whatever the one is set on the Titanic, and I thought that was just a fluke. I'm gonna love this one, but I soft DNF'd it before I continued with the video, and then I already owned it, so I figured I'll just finish it. I ended up giving it a 3. So it was just okay. And I fully recognize that like YA romance isn't something that I should be actively picking up, but it's just that this author is someone who I love in this space. I loved the Henna Wars. I loved Honey and Ishu's Guide to Fake Dating. Adiba is that girl. Like she knows what is going on with publishing, what people want. She's always on trend. She does the fake dating, she does the competition, a heist on the Titanic, and now a baking competition. Like, if you're looking for lesbian representation in YA, like she is doing it. And the characters that she creates are so unique, and they're always so confident in themselves. They're not necessarily coming out stories either. They're just existing and thriving. And I think it's so beautiful, especially with the author's note in here and what the first draft of this book looked like versus the book that she really wanted to be out there, especially for fat girls to be able to connect with. So this is about a baking competition. We have this character who is entering, and we also have a rival, and her family owns the donut shop. They both have donut shops like across the street. So their families don't get along, and they used to date. They've recently broken up, and now they're both in this competition, but their parents don't know that they were ever together. Unfortunately, the romance isn't really about them, but then at some points it is. But there's a whole other romance going on with another competitor, and I just did not get it. I didn't like the dynamic. I didn't understand what we were doing. I guess I just didn't want it to be a love triangle, and neither of the love interests really seemed right to me anyway. It all ends up making sense with the trajectory of the story, and I like the personal growth and the family stuff. But since there was so many romantic things going on that I didn't care for, I had to end up giving it a 3. Though it is like a solid competition style book. So if you or somebody close to you is looking for something like that, I think it's good in that aspect. Okay, and then we have all the books left that I've talked about in videos, and I really want to go on vacation. So I'm just gonna make this fast instead. And if you want to know more about them, each one has 2 to 5 minutes and a dedicated blog. The Last Word by Taylor Adams is about an author who gets a negative review and reaches out to the woman who left it and goes, please take down your review. It's mean and it's gonna affect my career. And she goes, then you shouldn't have written a terrible book. I am not taking down my review. And then someone ends up stalking her and trying to kill her and her dog while she's isolated on vacation. It's an interesting perspective on this type of story because this woman, Emma, has a really low self-worth to begin with. She has like no survival instinct. She's been through a lot that we get to learn throughout the book. And so she has to find the will to live, which is an interesting way to tell this story. I ended up giving it, I don't know, a 3.75 or a 4. I really think 3.75 is my new number because I'm gonna give that out a ton. But let's move on to A Holly Jolly Diwali, which is about a woman named Nikki, and she's going to a wedding in India that her friend didn't think she'd be able to attend because she has this career and she's well established in what she's doing and she's busy. But then she gets let go at the beginning of the book and she decides to take this opportunity to branch out and be free for the first time and be open to anything that comes her way, which includes a couple different potential relationships. So while she's attending this wedding and the festivities, she falls for this guy who other people have kind of been wanting to set her up with anyway. It's all very sweet and wholesome, but there is some difficult stuff to wade through for sure, but it's mostly the love story, but it's also her finding like what she wants to do in life. And she lives in a totally different area from this guy, so they have to decide, is this worthy of just a fling? Do we want it to be long-term? How are we even gonna make that work? I gave it a 3. I didn't love their relationship, which is really what makes or breaks a romance for me, which I think makes sense. Was I convinced? Did I love them for each other? Not necessarily, so it got a 3. Episode 13 by Craig DeLuey is a 3.75. It is about a ghost hunting TV show. It is mixed media. It's told in transcripts and emails and lists and texts about this crew who's going to film their next episode of their ghost hunting show, and they have found ghosts. Because of its mixed media vibe and the way you don't necessarily get close to the characters, that's not the type of story it's trying to be, I don't remember much about this at all. So perhaps my 3.75 should be dropped a little. I just know that I thought it was good, but probably not going to be anybody's new like favorite paranormal horror book. Then we've got Big Swiss by Jen Beagin, which I gave a 4-star, but I'm knocking down to a 3.75 because again, it's not that memorable. I think my opinion was a little swayed when I read this in the video that I read it for, because it was a video about DNFing, and I had soft DNF'd this earlier in the year. And when I picked it back up and I powered through it, I enjoyed it more than I was in the first 50 pages and more than I expected to. So I think automatically in my mind, I went, I like this book. It was good. But reflecting on it now, I don't really think it was good. I just think that it wasn't bad when I was expecting it to be bad. So it's about this woman who has a job as a transcriber for a sex therapist. She's listening in on the sessions and she's writing everything down, and she becomes enamored with one of his clients, who she nicknames Big Swiss. And then in real life, she recognizes this woman's voice and she decides to insert herself into her life with like a fake identity of her own, and just wants to get close to her and know more about her. Not like a romance, you're not supposed to root for their relationship, but they do build a deep relationship. These characters are not people you're necessarily going to like or agree with the way that they see the world, the way that the author has written them, their views on other people, but clearly we're already in a weird morality place. So yeah, I think it's in the 3s. Next up, we've got House of Cotton by Monica Brashears. So this is the story of a woman who is in a difficult position in life, so is kind of willing to take on whatever comes her way as far as income. And she ends up getting offered this job to work at like a, what do you call it, a mortuary, a funeral home. And she's being asked to do weird things. I don't know how much to give away regarding that, because I feel like that itself is something interesting to find out throughout the book. But the things that are expected of her just keep getting more odd and more questionable as far as like morality goes. It reminded me so much of Lakewood by Megan Giddings, because it's got this woman who's pulled into this weird environment, and you would almost expect it to get more thrilling as the book goes on. But the way that it doesn't makes it even more like darkly sinister with how quiet the horrors are, and that makes it that much more heavy. I think I gave this one a 3.75, shocker. And I think that was stylistically. I didn't connect a lot with the actual storytelling of the book, but the environment is just so fascinating and strange. Then we've got another book that I kicked off and thought it was going to be a new favorite, and then I just don't know why it did what it did. But I think I landed on a solid, was it a 3? Was it a 2.75? Great question. 12 Nights at Rotterhouse, J.W. Ocker. This is about an author who goes into a house and wants to write his experience while he's there. He's done this with a lot of other houses. He's questioning his entire like belief in the paranormal and thinks it'll be an interesting perspective from him who doesn't really believe in ghosts to witness the ghosts that are in here. He also invites a friend of his with him into the house, and just I can appreciate the fact that there were certain reveals that in another book that didn't also do like weird things I could appreciate. I think our thoughts on the main character really change. unexpectedly, and the things that he starts to say and do are not enjoyable to read. And in a horror book, obviously, there are horrific things that you're gonna read that you're not gonna like. And so like it accomplished that. But I just don't know what this book was necessarily trying to do. And it makes me uncomfortable for more reasons than I think the book intended. There were also just a couple plot points that I didn't care about. And I think that a lot of time was wasted. But look, we've got a 5-star next. That's Hunger by Roxane Gay. This is a memoir about her and her relationship with her body, how people have treated her throughout her life, why she believes that she is in a place that she is, the relationship with her body that she has, the relationship she has with food, the relationship she has with exercise, all of the things in life that have led her to feeling the way that she does now, how she's trying every day to fight against the thoughts that she has, how the world needs to change. It's just a really great exploration. I don't think it's setting out to teach you anything or to make you even understand her better. It's just her existence, very raw and honestly on page, and I commend her for that. I thought it was incredibly well written. Roxane Gay is a fantastic author, just sentence by sentence. She does it well. We've then got All Hallows by Christopher Golden, which I wish I had DNF'd. I think I ended up giving it a 2.5. The horrors of it all, being on Halloween, being about all of these children coming out of the woods and this spooky idea of kids who exist in real life being sucked into this like world. It just didn't deliver when you think it's gonna deliver, and then goes into a completely just like odd territory that also doesn't give the right horrors that you're expecting. Christopher Golden loves description. He loves atmosphere. He will set up a neighborhood for 100 pages just so you understand what everything looks like and the temperature of the air, the color of the leaves, which is great, but he takes it a little too far because you don't necessarily want to care about like the beautiful writing or like every little piece of dirt on the sidewalk when you want to read about the horrors that are taking place on Halloween. There just wasn't anything super unique about this or compelling at the end of the day that would make me recommend it over any other horror. With that said, I haven't given out any 5 stars, so don't take my opinion without the grain of salt. Then we've got Happy Place by Emily Henry. The whole reason for the sweater. This is my favorite Emily Henry, and I gave it a 4.25 because my ratings are extremely specific this month. I talked about this a lot in the vlog, which is why it's at this point in the stack, because I've said it all. We've got 2 main characters, Wynne and Harriet, and they broke up 5 months ago, but their friends still think they're together. And every summer they go to this like lake house together and they spend time together, and they don't want to ruin the last time that they're all going to be together. There's reasons for that, you come to understand. So they pretend to be together, and so there is a second chance romance in here and also a fake dating situation because they're pretending to be together, which I love. And the second chance of it all is neither of them have moved on. They are hurt. They are flawed, hurt individuals, and they're deciding if they want to be together again. And it's obviously not helping them stay apart when they have to put on this show for everyone. But the show is just so fun. The way they have to like continue to touch each other and talk to each other in front of other people. It's like they're acting out a relationship that they're not in. And that just makes it so fun. I think the thing about this more so than any Emily Henry is every single scene feels so intentional. Every scene gave me the exact feelings I think she set out for me to feel. When the characters are going book shopping and each of them, it talks about the book that they picked out and it gives you an insight into their personality. It just feels very organic. And then they all do drugs and they go to a fair and it was just so fun. And then when they jump in the pool together, there's like such a specific intent with that scene. It was also the most melancholy of all Emily Henry. There were big emotions from page 1, moving emotional conversations and relationships to navigate throughout the entire thing. It wasn't like the fun summer rom-com where 2 people are just meeting and all of this fun back and forth. Like they were going through it from the very beginning, and I just thought it was good. There are definitely reasons that it's in the 4s and not a 5. I can't think of what they are right now. I hate when there's a book that I give a 3.75 and I know exactly why I didn't like it, and then a book that's technically only half a star higher. It sounds like I loved everything about it, but oh shocker, Kayla's not good at book reviews. It's not like that's a surprise. Next up, we've got Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn, which I gave, what did I give this? A 3? And just because it was not for me, and I should have known that, and that's my bad. It's about a group of women who used to work as assassins, and now they're retired and somebody is maybe set out to assassinate them, and they have to survive and figure out what's going on. Half the book, well, I don't know, I didn't count the pages, but it felt like such a significant portion of the book was in the past, them working as assassins, them spying on people, taking people out, which like partially I enjoyed because I love the organization of like, not that I've ever done it, but setting out to kill somebody and like how to get into this place and how to do what you're doing. But then the action-packed nature of it, I didn't end up loving, and I didn't know that would be such a bulk of the book. Then we've got Black Tide by Casey Jones, which is the same thing, much more action-packed than I hoped. This is an apocalypse story where there's a man and a woman who sleep together, and then their one night stand never ends because they get thrust into an end of the world scenario where, I don't know how to really explain it or if I should, but they go to the beach and there are strange things on the beach, and they come to encounter creatures and just have to survive. Like, it's a survival story, pure and simple. I thought it was going to be a little bit more, but it wasn't. Oh, and I gave it 2 stars. An Unkindness of Ghosts by River Solomon, I gave a 4. This is about a main character named Aster who lives in the lower decks of this ship. The ship is described, I feel like there was even an image, maybe I made that up or I saw it online, where you can see the different levels of this spaceship, and the people in the lower decks are treated horrifically and crimes are committed against them, and that's where our main character Aster lives. Aster does some medical science stuff, and there is the Surgeon General also on the ship who is kind to her, and there is this relationship that builds for them. And because of him and what they're doing together and what they're working on and what they're learning about the ship, she gets access and she kind of sneaks into different parts of the ship to solve certain mysteries going on. There's not too much in the synopsis, but you do get to learn like what the ship is doing, what it's accomplishing, and also there's a mystery regarding Aster's mother and certain deaths or suicides that have occurred. Because of the things that she learns and the things that she gets to witness, she's really determined to create a different life for herself and find a way to get out of her circumstances. It was really brutal, it was really heavy, it was really sad. But then there are a couple other perspectives besides Aster that come into things, and there's this storytelling that's really beautiful, and there's these warm relationships, but it's all really dark at the same time. It was a super interesting read that I would recommend to pretty much anybody who likes sci-fi. Oh gosh. And then we've got It Came from the Closet, Queer Reflections on Horror, which was just such a wonderful time. This gets a 4.25 to be really specific, because I think that's actually how the stories average out. So this is a nonfiction book that is part memoir and part media, like critique or praise in some cases. So each author in here, there's 25, they are being tasked with sharing a story or an experience or a perspective from their own personal life and relating it to a film and how a horror film impacted their view of the world. It can be something that they saw in childhood, like a classic slasher, and you know, the horrible representation for trans folks that were in it and how it impacted their worldview today. Or it can be something like Hereditary that one of the authors watched, you know, just a couple years ago, and how it informed their thoughts on a certain like aspect about the world. I would recommend this if you're a fan of memoirs and horror movies. I think it does everything you expect, and that is just so wonderful to see. It's a really satisfying read because every conversation you expect there to be, about representation, about feeling seen, about how valuable this piece of media was or how harmful this piece of media was. It touches on everything. There's a lot of intersectionality in here as well. I just gave so many 5 stars. Then we've got my only other 5-star. We had Hunger and we had this, my only 5 stars of the month. So this is Una Out of Order by Margarita Montemor. And I talked about this so thoroughly in the vlog, I considered cutting out many minutes of it because I was just going on and on. So this is a unique plot, but a really conventional intent. So it's about this woman who appears every single year in a different year of her life. So like one year she's 54 and she lives that entire year of her life. And then suddenly she's 22 and lives that entire year of her life. And that's just how things go. She's not trying to solve the mystery of how it happened to her. She's not trying to fix it. That is just how her life works. And it's just so interesting to read because it brings up so many questions like, if you could go to any year, what year would you go to? If you could redo a year of your life, if you could start this year over, not knowing how it's going to end, do you think you would do the exact same things? It's about like, are we creating our own reality, or do you have control over how things go? Every time Una wakes up on New Year's Day in a new life, she has to be open to learning everything, who she's in a relationship with, who her friends are, who she can trust, just what she's doing with her life. And previous versions of her or future versions of her have set her life up for convenience. So she has to keep an eye on like her investments because, you know, if you know in 5 years that you could win the lot, like you know what the numbers are going to be, you need to play that lottery at the right time. It's fun, it's interesting, it's sad, it gives you all the messages you expect. I don't think it's like groundbreaking, but it's exactly the story I was expecting and I had a really nice time reading it. Then we've got Babel by R.F. Kuang, which the opposite is about to happen. I don't know how to concisely describe this one. I gave it a 4.5 and it's about colonization. It's about colonialism. It is a metaphor for that. It reads like a history textbook. It's teaching you a lot of things, whether you know them or not. There are constant footnotes. So if you're reading and you don't understand a reference, there is an explanation. But you can also skip those. I've seen people say that they really hated the footnotes, but you don't have to read them. So it's about Britain and history and exploitation, but we're through a fantasy lens. So there's like silver working, and silver can, based on language, connected to language, can create like magical opportunities. We have this main character who gets to work with silver and language and is given the opportunity to study at Oxford in this prestigious program. However, at the same time, they are very discriminated against. So we're following him as he goes to school, becomes a translator, connects with all of the people there, has a whole new life, and then starts working as a translator and also learns bad things about the world and people who are fighting against the whole group of people who are stealing things and ruining things for other people in other countries, stealing resources, etc. I just thought it was fascinating. I was interested in everything that was going on. I think the little bit of fantasy with the ton of just information was my perfect balance. Much like Yellowface, it drove home the same points over and over again. It had a very clear intent and it accomplished all of its goals. Then lastly, we have The Devotion of Suspect X by Kigo Higashino. And this, I have a whole hour-long live show because I picked it for the Literally Dead Book Club selection for the month of June. And this is a really interesting mystery book. They refer to it as a howdunit instead of a whodunit. And the person I would most recommend this, the reader out there who I think could love this so much, because I gave it a 3.75, is somebody who has just read mystery, like really traditional mystery novels. And this is the first thing like kind of outside that concept that you're reading, because I think it has a really interesting reveal and setup just in general, because at the beginning of the book you find out about this crime. So there's this man that dies and his wife or his ex-wife was involved, and then another guy, a neighbor next door. So you're following their perspectives as they're covering up this crime, and then you're following the detective who is solving the crime. And since you as the reader know what happened, you just get to follow the detective trying to piece it all together and how the crime got accomplished. There are things to be revealed and things for you as the reader to come to understand that are great. It also is just a really fascinating look into this like detective and physicist mind who's trying to understand the reason for what somebody did, like what was going on in their mind and how they created this alibi and how it all makes sense. It was super interesting. It's not like anything that I've read before. And if I didn't read, like if I hadn't read incredible plot twists before, I think that this could have hit even harder. I wish that this had shocked me more, and I see the potential that it could have if I read it at a different like point in my reading. So that's everything that I read. If you want more of my thoughts, I have so many vlogs and so many little mini discussions happening in all of my videos for these books. I hope you were convinced to pick one of these up, or maybe convinced to not pick one of them up. Let me know any of your thoughts down below if you've read any of these and your similar or differing opinions. I always encourage you to do that because I love to hear it. My favorite thing is just scrolling through Goodreads and seeing what everybody thought of books that I have read, which is why I was especially devastating when Goodreads was down for that day this week. Hey, I finished my video before my coffee. And with that, I bid you adieu, and I will see you for my next couple of videos, the mid-year book freakout and my quarterly update. Bye for now.